Sound good, Yuri?
Okay, do we see my screen?
Yeah, it's just loading. Perfect. Yep. Excellent. Great.
Yeah, I've adapted to my habitat. You and I, we are one of a kind.
Lower the volume a little bit, maybe.
Keep it hard.
Yeah,
The video and audio good?
yeah,
Yes, can we maybe lower the volume to half or something?
reduce it a tiny bit. It's a little loud. Great.
There's no audio on this one.
Yeah, those are just videos. It's great.
Is the audio better there?
Maybe half as well.
Okay, lower than that. Okay.
Awesome. Perfect.
Thank you.
And that's all good.
Wonderful. Yep. And we've got the manuals.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, for my video, can you make the volume like barely present, really? I don't need it to be heard. I'm going to talk over it.
Ladies and gentlemen, the show is right this way. Right this way.
Is that level okay?
No, like, almost muted.
So gather around, my friends, and here we go. Presenting the one and only Vivo.
I think.
Are you ready, Vivo? Okay, let's get to it.
Chris, can you mute it altogether?
Okay.
Yeah, that one I think will be fine. Perfect. Great. And we've got earrings. Yep. Wonderful. Great. We've got Jabaris.
Are you eating enough? How's classes? Are you and Jade official, and will you be bringing her home with you for Thanksgiving?
Oh, easy.
Are you eating enough? Are you eating enough? How's classes? Are you and Jade official, and will you be bringing her home with you for Thanksgiving?
And for mine, can you just play in loop? Thanks.
Okay. I'll play and loop that one.
Wonderful. And then that's just the trailer at the end. And we'll try to, just so everybody knows, this will be the Chris will be with us for 30 minutes. So we'll try to get through as much as we can. Hopefully we'll get through the entire piece. If not, then I'll have to just quickly hop on with mine, with like my screen sharing, and then we can go from there. I've tried to tighten up the intro as well, so we have enough time for everybody to go through there. So, yeah.
Great. Chris, awesome. Can you put my video on loop as well? I forgot to mention it.
What slide are you, Emmanuel? Do you remember? Let's see.
In a sec. I think it was 13 or
Yeah,
14.
13.
Okay, you want to go ahead and loop that? Okay.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Wonderful. Yeah.
And
thanks, Chris.
And for my slides with the videos, Chris, I'll cue you in for like when to play them, because for some of them I'll just talk a little bit before we hit play. Does that sound good?
Yes, sounds good.
Awesome.
Wonderful. And I've asked everyone to just say like next slide, please, and then so Chris can advance them. And a huge thank you to Chris for helping. I was having some issues with all my setup and everything being visible, so I can still have my notes up. So Chris is a huge help. Thank you so much.
Sure, no problem. Am I just going to be running this slideshow straight, or are we going to be stopping for introductions?
I will start in. I'll do a quick intro, and then I'm going to pass it over to Joe, and then it's going to go right into the slide, and then everyone's just going to sequentially follow after that. So that when I'm speaking, we'll just have the first 2 slides up. As soon as I start doing the bios, we can move to the next slide, and I'll just let you know, and then it's just going to cascade from there.
Okay.
Yeah. Wonderful.
All right. I'll just be in the background. Just let me know the cues.
Thank you, Chris. We've got a couple minutes. Everyone good? Feeling good? Great. All right. So just for reference, there's about 800 people who are joining the main stage today. And then there's 4 concurrent sessions happening with along like 3, and ours is 4th. So folks can kind of choose which sessions they're going to be joining. So I'm not sure exactly how many we'll have, but that's the kind of the scope of who's virtually joining today. So.
Joe and Manny, are you guys in the same room? Yeah.
No, all the apartments in Vancouver look very similar.
That's Vancouver. It's all the same.
The same guitar and mirror and tree and plants and door.
Yep. I called Joe rush half an hour ago. I was like, man, it's down again. I need some help, and he came to the rescue. So,
oh man,
we have the same background.
It's all IKEA homes.
Sonia, so you are moderating the questions as well?
Yes.
Perfect. Cool.
Yeah. So right after we go through our slide set, we'll end with the trailer, and then I have a couple questions that we talked about, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat as well during the session, and I'll just pull questions out of there or in the Q&A function. So I'll let people know to leverage those 2 if they want to ask any questions.
Cool.
Yeah. Chris, do you want to just maybe pop up the first slide? So we just have it as a placeholder. So as people are joining, they know they're in the right place. And then we'll all just kind of, the panel will just be right underneath. We may as well have
Sure.
that up.
1 second here.
Yeah. We've got a couple minutes, so all good. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we have about 2 minutes. We'll start at like a minute after, but I am mindful of time, so we'll try to start right at 101. Right, so I'm going to ask all of our panelists to please come on camera and stay muted. And then we'll just get going here. I'm just waiting for the cue from Trevon that says that our session is live. So it should be in a minute or so. If everyone, they're just wrapping up in the main stage. All right. Looks like we are good to go. I'm getting the cue that we're good to go. I'm just going to take a look at our guest count as people are trickling in. We'll give it another 30 seconds or so, then we'll get going here. All right. Let's get going. And people can kind of hop in as they're moving around from the space. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our discussion on the influence of diverse perspectives at Sony Pictures ImageWorks as part of this year's AfroAnimation Summit. Our panelists will share their influence of their diverse perspectives on different projects such as Vivo, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and The Mitchells vs. the Machines. I will start off with some introductions and then we'll get started. My name is Sonia Bhatia. My pronouns are she and her. I am the Manager of Diversity, Inclusion, and Engagement at ImageWorks. I'd like to start off by respectfully acknowledging that I'm joining you virtually from the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations, as I am in Vancouver, BC today. I acknowledge the original caretakers of these lands and express my gratitude to have the opportunity to work and live here. With acknowledgement of our journey in the diversity and inclusion space, along with our desire to continue to build strong community partnerships, I have the pleasure of starting today's session and introducing our panelists. I have had the pleasure of working with these incredible artists over the last few weeks, hearing their diverse stories, their journeys, and the tremendous impact that they have had on the work that they do at ImageWorks every day. I am truly honored and filled with excitement to have them as my colleagues and for you to all get a chance to hear from them today. I will start by introducing Jabari Kofer, pronouns they, them. Jabari is a genderqueer artist, animator from the US who has been working in the film industry since 2009. They've been passionate about art since childhood and became determined to be an animator once they learned Disney movies were actually made by people rather than springing from a magical ether. Outside of work, Jabari enjoys drawing animals and furries, painting, reading, and currently being obsessed with Elden Ring. Jabari, do you want to give everyone a wave? Awesome, great. Okay, now I'm going to move on to Joe Darko. Joe, pronouns he, him, is a character animator and animation lead at Sony ImageWorks with over 7 years of industry experience ranging from VFX to feature animation. He has most recently been working on projects such as the upcoming Netflix movie The Sea Beast and Sony's own Across the Spider-Verse. Joe was born in London, UK, raised in Senegal, and has family originating from Ghana. His journey started in Dakar, establishing a comic book empire at the age of 8. However, once his father's stack of free paper ran out, he decided to pursue a career with lower overhead costs and graduated from Bournemouth's University Computer Animation Program. Joe, do you want to give everyone a wave? Awesome, thank you. Okay, I'll now move on to Emmanuel Guterra, pronouns he, him. Emmanuel is a senior animator with over 10 years of experience in the VFX feature animation industry. Born in Kinshasa, but of Rwandan heritage, his family immigrated to Canada when he was just 5 years old. From a young age, when Manu wasn't playing basketball, he would always find himself drawing anime characters or comic book superheroes in his notebooks. The journey wasn't straightforward, but after a detour through sciences and a short stint studying electrical engineering in Ottawa U, Manu taught himself how to use Blender and used it to get into a 3D animation program at Centre NAD Montreal. Fast forward to 2022, he's animating a whole plethora on the upcoming Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Does he want to wave? Awesome. Okay, I'll move on to Taekwon. Taekwon Wright, pronouns he, him. Ty Wright is a look development artist with 13 years of experience at Sony Pictures Imageworks. Ty is originally from Brooklyn, New York, and currently lives in Vancouver, BC. He has family roots in South Carolina, Trinidad, and Venezuela. His favorite project to date is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It is exciting for him to learn something new every day through creative and technical problem solving while at work. Ty loves to explore traditional art, dance, and travel in his free time. Thanks, Ty. Nicole Kernut Sutton, pronouns she, her, was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, and have always had a passion for art and film. She started her career at Imagework in 2001, doing live action set extensions, plate cleanup, and rotoscoping, but she always knew texture painting was where she wanted to be. In 2015, she was promoted to a texture paint lead, a job which she dearly loves because it allows her to teach, mentor, and share her deep love for animation in a cinematic art form. After almost 25 years in the industry, she is so happy to finally be seeing people who look like her and her family in the movies that she helps make. Hello to Nicole. Okay, and lastly, Ire Santos, pronouns he, him. Ire Santos is a self-taught animator who has worked all over the world in studios like Pixar Animation Studios, DNEG, Jellyfish, and MPC. He is currently a senior animator at Sony Pictures Imageworks on the upcoming sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Wonderful. I will now invite Joe Darko to get us started. You will hear from each of our artists, and then we'll open up a Q&A afterwards. Please feel free to use either the chat or the Q&A function, and we'll try our best to answer all of your questions. Okay, over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Sonia. Hello, everyone. I'm Joe Darko. I'm a senior animator and animation lead at Sony Imageworks, and I'm very excited to be here with all of you today. First slide, please, Chris. Awesome. So for those of you who aren't too familiar with the production pipeline, it roughly looks something like this. This diagram was created by Carl Herbst, one of the VFX supervisors at Imageworks, and it highlights all the different departments that collaborate to create all the animation movies we love. The production, coordination, and pipeline teams are actually missing from this diagram, but you can think of them as the black lines that connect all the boxes, allowing the different departments to work with each other. So as I was saying, I work in the animation department, which is situated around the middle part of the production pipeline. Next slide, please. So for today's presentation, I'd like to talk to you about, I'd like to show you some of the work I did on the movie Vivo and talk about adding cultural specificity in animation. Next slide, please. In the scene you're about to watch, the main characters Andres, the old man, and Vivo are performing in the town square and collecting money from tourists. The aim of the shot was just to show the two main characters having fun, singing and dancing. They enter the frame, dance a little bit, and exit. Could we play the clip, please?
Yeah, I've adapted to my habitat. You and I, we are one of a kind. Keep it tight.
That's great. Thanks, Chris. Could you mute it and play it in the background? Awesome. So, yes. So usually before we start our work in animation, we are given some storyboards or a rough layout as a guide of what the directors expect to see. However, in a scene like this one, where the cameras heavily depend on what the characters are doing, it was pretty hard for them to predict and prepare. Therefore, I had a lot of freedom to design the shot almost from scratch. An opportunity like this isn't too common in animation, so I wanted to make sure that I made it count, not just stop at animating something entertaining, but I also wanted to add some cultural specificity to the shot. I've sadly never been to Cuba, so I didn't exactly know what the atmosphere would be like in a real plaza in Havana. However, based on my experience living in London and Paris and going to places like Leicester Square, I remembered that there were often different performers playing next to each other. For example, someone would be playing music, and not too far away, someone else would be juggling. So the first idea I pitched, could we pause the video on the dancers? So somewhere around there. So the first idea I pitched was to have some of the Havana locals that may have been doing some salsa dancing nearby join in and start dancing next to Andres and Vivo. Next slide, please. Around the time I started working on the shot, I went to Ghana to celebrate my father's 70th birthday. One thing I'd forgotten about living in Ghana was that people usually carry handkerchiefs around because the weather's so hot. But another thing they use them for is for dancing. Here are some videos I took at my father's 70th celebration. Go ahead and play both the videos, Chris. Thank you. Seeing these videos reminded me how the use of handkerchiefs in dancing is a part of the cultural identity of Ghanaians and many other West African cultures. I thought something like this could be a nice detail to add into the shot. However, before I could be convinced, I had to do some research to make sure it was also representative of Afro-Cuban culture. Next slide, please. Oh, no. So luckily, I found a number of videos online where I saw Cuban dancers using handkerchiefs, as well as some old videos from the movie's choreographer, Calvert Hodge, and his team dancing with hankies. Here's a video of an old man in Havana dancing the rumba and using his handkerchief. Hit it, Chris. Great, thanks. So, having found some evidence that this was also representative of Afro-Cuban culture, I went ahead and pitched the idea that the Havana dancers would all pull out their hankies during the shot. Next slide, please. Lastly, I also pitched the idea of featuring the Cuban flag on one of the dancers' hankies, remembering that similarly to Cubans, people were very proud of their flags in the cultures I grew up around. This not only made the scene feel more authentic and specific, but literally created a visual celebration of the culture and the music within the shot. Could we play the original animated shot on mute, please? So in conclusion, what started as a shot of two characters entering the frame, dancing in a circle, and exiting became a shot that now contains several nods to Afro-Cuban culture. This example is one of the many reasons diverse perspectives and cultural diversity matters at big studios such as Sony. With every new project, our content becomes more diverse, and it is equally important to reflect that in the teams making the movies. Thank you for listening. Over to you, Emmanuel.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emmanuel Gatera, and I'm a senior character animator here at Sony Pictures ImageWorks. First, I want to tell you a little bit about my journey. My family's from Rwanda. We immigrated to Montreal, Canada when I was 6 years old. And growing up as a first-generation immigrant, I was encouraged to pursue a career in sort of the cliche, traditional, successful job domains, you know, the doctors, the lawyers, engineer, and business. But I was really into anime, kung fu movies, video games, and basketball. And even though I spent most of my days drawing superheroes and anime characters and animating stick figure fights, it never occurred to me that it existed as a job and that someone was actually paid to help make those cartoons I loved watching. I was programmed to be an engineer growing up, so I did, all the way up until university, when in 2007, thanks to YouTube, which was relatively new at the time, I saw a student animated clip posted online. It was a little robot dancing to Michael Jackson's Smooth Criminal. And it was an animation, but you know, he was spinning around, he was moonwalking, it was nice, it was clean, and it caught my attention. So I just clicked on that link. And the next video I saw on that page was an animated Michael Jordan dunk, which, as a basketball fanatic, totally caught my attention. So I clicked next. And the third video was an animated Kung Fu fight, Bruce Lee Kung Fu fight. So I was locked in. That was 3 for 3, and I was super interested. And I took a deep dive and I looked at more student reels on YouTube, and I started learning about schools nearby. And I taught myself how to use Blender, and I applied. It took a couple of tries, but I finally got in. And then I dropped everything I was doing and I changed my career path. It was a gamble to my family at the time, but it paid off. Fast forward to today, and I'm working on the sequel to Spider-Verse, and I'm animating those same superheroes that I was doodling in my books. Now that I'm here, I want to tell you why you should join me. As an animator, our responsibility is to bring characters to life and to tell their stories, one tiny chunk of the movie at a time. As Joe mentioned earlier, we use layout and storyboards and sound to kind of guide us, but it's up to each animator to move the character in the scene and to tell the story. And that's where we get to express ourselves as animators. We draw inspiration from our environments, from our upbringing, and from our influences. So each individual is unique. And we all relate to the story and to the characters in our own unique way. As you can see on the next slide, recently, across animated features, we're telling more and more diverse stories. Specifically at SBI, recently we've had Vivo, which is showcasing the Cuban culture. And we've had Miles Morales in Spider-Man, who is representing the Puerto Rican and African American culture. And we've had Over the Moon, which is showcasing the Chinese culture. With more diverse stories, we also need more diversity behind the scenes, because that leads to a more authentic representation of those characters. We're at a point where Black culture is being showcased more than ever. And I would love to see more Black artists helping craft those stories. On the next slide here, even amongst us, the Black diaspora, there's a tremendous amount of diversity. You know, we're spread from Africa to America to Latin America and the Caribbean. You know, you have someone like Ty representing 3 of those groups just by himself. But even within the United States, this Black culture is different depending on which region you're from. You know, it varies a lot. I grew up in Canada, and I was tremendously influenced by American culture. But a Brooklyn kid could bring something way more authentic to Miles than I could ever think of. On the next slide, I have another example here. Last year, I was helping tell the story of an Afro-Cuban musician named Andres in the movie Vivo. We were lucky to have Juan de Marcos casted as the voice actor. He himself is an Afro-Cuban musician. Chris, you can go ahead and play the video muted. I'll just talk over it. But Andres, Juan de Marcos, the voice actor, you know, he was perfect authenticity. Like he's as representative of the character as you could get. You know, he had a wonderful voice and he had an infectious joy. And there was something special about him that I tried to bring to the character of Andres when I was animating this shot. I happened to go on a trip to Cuba a few months before we started on Vivo, and I could draw inspiration from the people I met and the things I saw during my trip. For example, whenever I visited a square like this one in Havana, yes, you had the street performers on stilts and the typical tourist attractions, but you also had local groups of teenagers hanging around all the time. And that's because they were using the Wi-Fi hotspots in the square. That's how internet was distributed in Havana. So they would have to go to these hotspots to get their social media fix. And I know because I was out there with them every evening because I was trying to get some, you know, NBA playoff updates. It was 2009, it's the year the Raptors won. It was super exciting, and I had to get my updates. But that was a little detail that I couldn't wait to bring to the movie when I joined it. And it's all those little details that add up to more authenticity. Chris, if you could pull up the next slide. Truth is, there are very few Black artists in the industry. And when I was a student, there were very few of us out there too. Out of 300 students, I only remember ever seeing one other Black person. So I want more Black kids to know that this is a fulfilling and viable career option. I went to university, but you don't even have to. I was just doing that to get my mom off my back. You can take an online program, which is much cheaper by American standards, and turn that into a 6-figure salary if you work hard enough. Or you could be self-taught. That's a lot harder. I recommend taking a class. But at the end of the day, it's only your reel that matters. It's not your diploma. So there's not as much gatekeeping going on. So I want to conclude by saying that I am very happy that AfroAnimation was created and that there's a big community of young Black artists out there. For some time, I've been wondering where everybody was hiding. And if this starts to sound like a pitch, it's because it is. I need y'all. I want to see y'all out here. And I want to thank you for being here today. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of us around.
All right, thank you, Manuel. Hello, everybody. My name is Ari Santos. I'm also a senior animator at Sony Pictures. I'll just tell you a little bit about my story and about my career. I was born in Nigeria, and I was there for about 3 years, and then I moved to Scotland. I lived in Aberdeen, Scotland, for about 11 years. And when I was about 14, I moved over to Alberta, and I started moving around for school and for work. And so I would say that I am, anytime someone asks me where you're from, I say yes. And that kind of just like shuts down the conversation. But the one thing that kind of stuck throughout my entire life for me was animation. And animation was something that we all, most of us kind of grew up with, and with Disney movies and Sony movies. And it was something that really kind of influenced my life. And I remember very clearly watching the behind the scenes of a movie. And I saw some people working at the computer. And I was like, wait a second. If they're working at the computer, that means they're probably getting paid to make cartoons. And I was like, that is exactly what I want to do. Sign me up. So when I went to my Nigerian parents and I said, hey, mom and dad, I want to make cartoons. They were like, okay, go back and read your book. So that was, that was definitely something I had to convince them. But when I started getting into animation, that was something that I wasn't old enough to be able to go to any animation school or anything like that. So I thought to myself, you know what? I'm just going to try learning by myself. So after years and years and years of going online and reading books and watching as many videos as I possibly could about animation and about learning animation, I got to a point where I felt like I wasn't really able to learn much more by myself. So I had to get some external help to kind of help me level up in my animation abilities. So what I did, I went online again. I went to IMDb, went to every single animated movie that I liked, and just went click. I Googled everybody that I could find. And actually, Jabari was one of those people that I messaged like almost 10 years ago, 10, 15 or 10, 12 years ago. And I was like, please look at my work. Can you please give me some advice? And they did. And it's great to be working with them now, which is such a full circle thing. But that entire process was a long. So what Manny was saying about doing self-taught, going to school definitely helped expedite that process, but being self-taught took me about 10 years to even get into an internship, But getting into that internship was definitely the start of something wonderful, and it can be done if you just have, enough drive and enough effort to do it. But I learned a huge lesson from that. Sorry, can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Look at that cute little kid. Anyway, so there's a huge lesson that I learned from that whole process is that whatever you want to do, whatever it is, don't wait for anybody to give you permission to do it. Get up and do it yourself. Find the resources and find the people that help you, and just start going. Can we also go to the next slide, please? So always stay inspired. It's an important thing to make sure that you find whatever it is that inspires you and be able to find ways to kind of draw from that. Going outside and being able to, something I love doing is I love going to a coffee store and being super creepy by just staring at people and watching them live in their lives. That is one of the most entertaining things to me, because it shows me people who are just existing. And people who are just existing is what really kind of makes you realize more about life and humanity and everything like that. So when I start taking, and anytime I'm sketching or anytime I'm taking notes about these people that I'm seeing, I'm realizing that I'm taking notes based on my perspective. My perspective, I find, is really important, because that's coming from me and my experiences. I'm the only person who has lived my life, and when I express myself artistically, I'm expressing myself through that voice. And that's the thing that's really, really important for every single artist, is to find that voice, find that thing that makes you inspired, find that thing that really, really fills you with life. And the world wants to hear that voice. The world wants to see you. Can you go to the next slide, please? So I'm currently working on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And this was one of the shots that I animated on the movie, and this was in the trailer. And after the trailer came out, it was great to see the audience's reaction to the whole trailer. And so I decided to upload some of the reference footage that I shot for the trailer. And there was a really, really positive reaction online. But the thing that really, really stuck out to me was the fact that I had a lot of people messaging me saying how their daughter or their son watched the movie, and then they showed them the clip that I posted online, and they're thinking to themselves, "Oh wow, it's really, really great to see that there's people who look like me who are actually making these movies." And that was a huge, huge thing for me, because growing up, I didn't really have a lot of people that look like me making, behind the scenes making these movies. But now there's a lot more, and we need more. We need more people of all sorts of cultures and backgrounds being able to make these movies, because the world needs to see your perspective. The world needs to see your voice, and that's what I think is super duper important. So stop wasting time. Come on, let's go. Let's make some movies. We're gonna be good. Okay. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Hey everyone, I'm Jabari. I'm currently a senior animator at ImageWorks, and I got to be a lead animator on Mitchells vs. the Machines, and wanted to share an experience that I had on the show with you all. So when I first started on the project, I immediately noticed that Katie had a rainbow button on her hoodie, but I was wary of getting my hopes up about what this could imply. I was very surprised later on when the director shared character backstories with us. And under Katie's, it said that she liked girls, wasn't into guys, but that doesn't play a huge role in the story, but it's still important. So I was thrilled to finally have a canonically queer main character of an animated film. And things got better from there, 'cause towards the end of production, they added a scene where Linda gives Katie a call and says a very important line, which we have for you. If we go to the next slide and play the video, please.
House classes. Are you and Jade official, and will you be bringing her home with you for Thanksgiving?
Oh, easy.
Can we play it again? Because it sounds like the volume
Are
is
you and Jade official,
low.
and will you be bringing her home with you for Thanksgiving?
Oh, easy.
Awesome.
Are you eating enough?
So can
House
we go to
classes.
the next
Are you and
slide?
Jade official, and will you be bringing her home with you for Thanksgiving? Are you eating enough? House classes. Are you and Jade official, and will you be bringing her home with you for Thanksgiving?
Can we
Oh,
go to the
easy.
next slide, please? Okay, so Linda's line went through a bunch of different versions. Originally, she asked, "Are you dating anyone, and will she be coming home with you for Thanksgiving?" There was a lot of back and forth over which pronoun should be used here. At one point, it was suggested that maybe Linda could say, "Will they be coming home with you?" And then that way the audience could just have that imply whatever they want. Or they said that maybe if she says they, maybe then people will think, "Oh, maybe Katie's with a non-binary person." But I know, as someone who is genderqueer, who uses they, them pronouns, I know that out in the world, most people, one, don't know what non-binary people are at all. Two, when they hear the word they don't immediately think of us. So I figured that if they use the word they, then most people are gonna, in their mind, think he and assume that Katie is straight. So a bunch of other LGBT folks who were on the show, we got together, created a little chat room where we talked about this and how important it was to have this line in the film and to have it clear. So we each sent emails explaining what this meant to us and what it could possibly mean for LGBT audience members. In my email, I focused on the fact that if Linda says she, it makes it unambiguous that Katie is a lesbian, no questions asked, no YouTube videos wondering whether or not she was gay. And then I also talked about how it shows that Linda knows that her daughter is gay and is accepting of this, is supportive, and would be thrilled to have Katie potentially bring home a girlfriend for the holidays. Thankfully, things went well. Our voices were listened to, and we got so much more than we thought that we could. Can we go to the next slide, please? It turned out that they made a few changes to the film. The character Jade was given a name, as originally she was just a background friend. So she got a name. She was shown more prominently in scenes where Katie's friends were in there. Katie refers to her a few times throughout the film, and Linda's line was changed to the final version where she asks about Katie and Jade specifically and asks if she'll be coming home for Thanksgiving, which is fantastic. And this goes to show the importance of having LGBT folks both on screen and behind the scenes, as I feel like had Mitchell's not had like LGBT folks on the crew and had we not have had our voices listened to, chances are Linda's line either wouldn't have been in the film at all, or it would have been left ambiguous and there would have been questions about whether or not Katie was actually gay. One other thing I wanted to mention about this film is that I really love the fact that even though Katie is a queer character, the story doesn't revolve around that, as it seems like most LGBT stories either revolve around coming out or some kind of trauma. So it was fantastic to have a story with a main queer character that wasn't about either of those things, that her sexuality wasn't the focus, but it also wasn't swept under the rug and hidden. Like, it's a good example of the fact that LGBT people are full human beings. There's more to us than our sexuality or gender. And I feel like there's no reason why this can't be shown in films. So I think that one of the best ways to get this to happen is to have more of us behind the scenes, especially having more queer and trans folks of color, as most LGBT representation happens to be very white. And we exist all over the world. We should all like be a part of this process. So if you are LGBT, person of color, any combination of those things, and you're interested in animation or just filmmaking, do know that there's a place for you in this industry and that we need your voices here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicole, and I am not an animator at Sony. I am a texture painter and a texture paint lead at ImageWorks. I've been at Sony since 2001, and I've been in the visual effects industry since 1998. My road to the film industry, it wasn't a straight path. It was a bit of a detour, actually. I'd always been passionate about art and film, but I had no idea my job was a job until I took a graveyard shift at a VFX facility to put myself through grad school for anthropology, and I was doing data I/O work. But every day I would see people using computers to paint all kinds of amazing things like spaceships and talking animals. And a lot like my colleagues who spoke earlier, I couldn't believe this was actually a thing you could do for money. So one day I asked one of those painters if they could teach me what they did, and they very kindly agreed. And the second I got a stylus in my hand, I knew that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So just to start, I just wanted to share a little bit about texture paint and what we do, like what our part is in the full CG feature pipeline. I like to think of texture paint as a point on a triangle that includes modeling and look development. The first step in our process is that our clients turn over concept art. It can be anything from like a building to a dragon, and it basically shows us what their vision of that person, place, or thing looks like. Then our incredibly talented modeling department sculpts models that look like raw clay when they're finished. They use Maya, ZBrush, Mudbox, and Marvelous Designer at Sony. So you can see that slide of that's Miles Morales, untextured. And then it is our job to create two-dimensional UV maps that are applied to the three-dimensional models to make the thing look like whatever it's supposed to be. So you can see on the right, that image, I think it started out as like a meme or something to explain what texture painters, what UV mapping is. And it's ridiculous, but it's actually like the best explanation I've ever seen. So I've used it to show my parents, like, you know, this is kind of what I do. So if you see like the the wrapper is basically the texture map, and the chocolate is like the Santa is the model. So we paint those two-dimensional maps that then kind of wrap around the 3D object. So a super simple explanation to describe something that's actually can be fairly complex. For a character like Miles, he might have like about 16 of those little squares to kind of create his entire body, but you could have like a spaceship or like a giant building, and that could be, you know, maybe like 300 of those little squares. So next slide, please. Texture painting, it isn't just about painting color. In fact, the majority of our work is actually done in grayscale, creating black and white maps that describe not just what the color of the thing is, but also what does it feel like? Is it smooth metal? Is it rough wood? Is it aged leather? Is it cracked? Does it have holes in it? How does it react to light? Is it shiny or dull? Is it painted metal? And then maybe it's a combination of both those properties. When texture painters paint skin, we look at things like subsurface properties, which means like where does the light penetrate skin more or less? You have parts of the body like lips, ears, and the tips of noses that are more subsurfacey, and then you have like foreheads, chins, and elbows that are less so because the body parts are closer to bone. Tanning roughens skin, so it reflects light differently than like the softer skin under your arms or on the backs of your legs. So it's the texture painter's job to kind of come in and create maps that are going to describe all those things. And then those maps then tell shaders, which are programs that calculate appropriate amounts of light, darkness, and color during the rendering process to treat how to treat each of those painted components. And at ImageWorks, we use Mari, Substance Painter, Substance Designer, and Photoshop for texturing. So it's here that I wanted to start talking about how diversity informs our role as texture painters at Sony. So when I first started in the industry, most of the people of color that we created suffered from what I call the Black Barbie situation, which is kind of what this slide is supposed to represent. It's basically you had the Caucasian Barbie and then like the Latino and the Black Barbie were just the same Barbie with a darker skin tone. And I actually remember getting one of these Barbies as a small child and just kind of like calling that out immediately. I was just like, it's the same Barbie. It's not a real Black Barbie. You know, it's like it was the same hair, the same nose. It was very disappointing. So, you know, the sad thing to me as a painter was, you know, not only did the people we were creating, you know, not look like people of color, they didn't even really look human because, you know, Black people don't come like that. They kind of just look like mannequins. Another issue that came up for me is that even when we really did try to match a realistic skin tone, all our Black people were that one skin tone. There was no recognition that, you know, we come in a rainbow, a vast range of skin tones. We have different hair textures, we have different facial features. So the first movie I worked on where I started to sense a shift in how we brought brown people to life and ImageWorks was Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And that had Earl and his son Cal. If we could go to the next slide, please. So, yeah, Cloudy was the first film I worked on where there was actually some acknowledgement and discussion of the subsurface properties of darker skin and how it lights differently than lighter skin. And these are topics that my friend and colleague Ty is going to be discussing with you in just a bit. It was also the first film I worked on where there was a real effort made to make a person of color look authentic, not just in the coloring, but in the facial features and the mannerisms and vocal inflections. We were super lucky on Cloudy that we had Mr. T as our voice and inspiration for Earl. And, you know, for me, this was like a turning point in Sony's treatment of Black people in all animated features across the board. You can see on the screen right there, unfortunately, Earl's wife and Cal's mom, Regina, didn't fare so well. She was indeed a Black Barbie, but she got an afro, so it was a small victory. Next slide, please. So I don't think it comes as any surprise to any of us probably listening that even in a cutting edge industry like visual effects, it wasn't really that long ago that it was unheard of for animated features to have hero characters of color like Miles in Spider-Verse and Gabby in Vivo, or interracial couples like Rio and Jefferson. And I truly believe that the change we're seeing now, it's not only coming from the top down with the directors that we all hear about, like Ryan Coogler and Kemp Powers and Ava DuVernay and Matthew Cherry, it's coming from the bottom up as well, from those of us behind the scenes, the artists advocating not only for ourselves, but for the characters we create and what they represent to the world. For me personally, I had what I call my Clarice Starling moment a few years ago. For those of you who don't know, Clarice is an FBI agent in the movie Silence of the Lambs, and there was a really impactful scene in that movie where Clarice's boss belittles her in front of a bunch of other police officers as a way of kind of like ingratiating himself with them. And later on, he apologizes to her and says, like, it didn't really matter. I was just, that's not really how I feel. I was just doing it to kind of get in good with these other cops. And she says, it matters. Mr. Crawford, cops look at you to see how to act, and it matters. And that always stayed with me. And I was at work one day, and I was sitting in a room, and some clients were talking about wanting to put a really sexy outfit on a Harvard-educated Black female character for an expedition to the Arctic. And I could see that my boss wanted to say something about this, but he didn't. So I did. And it was terrifying. It was my first time speaking up like that. And I know it seems like a really little thing, but I just couldn't let that woman go out into the freezing cold with skin tight leggings and a crop top. So I said something, like, I think she would wear a coat. And they listened to me, and the character got a coat. And again, it was just a small thing, but now that movie is out there in the world, and I can rest easy knowing that every little girl watching will see a smart, capable woman who knows you need to wear a jacket in the Arctic. And I've been speaking up ever since. And it was that desire to see people of color represented honestly and accurately in the films that I took part in, to advocate on my own behalf to lead the texture paint team on Across the Spider-Verse. And I can't tell you how empowering it feels to work on a film where diversity and multiculturalism isn't just encouraged, it's mandated. I have never worked on a film where so much effort has been made to create characters that look, sound, and move authentically. And I'm not just talking about our hero characters like Miles, Rio, and Jefferson. Even our crowd characters on Across the Spider-Verse are the antithesis of the Black Barbie. They are different shades, they are different shapes, they are different ages, they have realistic noses and hairstyles, and even their clothing choices are representative of unique cultures and subcultures. A couple of years ago, I remember seeing a TikTok of two Black men looking at a Black Panther poster in a movie theater right before it was about to come out. And they were just exclaiming to each other, like, this must be how white people feel the whole time. And that's how I feel on Spider-Verse. Every day I paint people who look like me and my family, and it's just so incredibly meaningful and impactful. And even though we're still pretty far out from finishing our movie, I have never been prouder of anything I've worked on. And I can truly say I put love into every brushstroke. I want to end by saying I'm really thrilled to be at ImageWorks right now, even having been here almost 20 years. Right now is such an incredibly important time for us. Our opinions are sought after, they're valued. We work for directors like Kemp Powers and our Vice President, Michelle Grady, who's made diversity not just a talking point, but like a true action item at our company. And I hope some of you out there will come and join us and help ImageWorks to tell your stories. And the last thing I want to leave you with are two quotes from a personal hero of mine, Viola Davis. Her memoir, Finding Me, is everything. The first is, that's what people want to see when they go to the theater. I believe at the end of the day, they want to see themselves, parts of their lives they can recognize. And I feel that if I can achieve that, it's pretty spectacular. And lastly, and I think this one isn't particularly relevant to us in the film industry, we are blessed to be able to dream so big. And that's it for me. Thank you all so much.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Just shout out to everybody in the chat and everybody for being here. My name is Taekwon Wright. I'm a look development artist at Sony, and I'll give you a little bit of my background. I did not know a ton of computer graphics coming out of school. In undergrad, I did traditional art and painting, so I really didn't know which direction to go in. And I had a mentor that guided me towards a computer lab that was upstairs, and I went to that computer lab, learned software like After Effects and Maya, and it still wasn't enough. And someone earlier, someone named Brittany in the chat mentioned going back to school. I went back to school to learn more computer graphics, and that's what led me on the path to go to Sony. In that program, I had to do a thesis, submitted the thesis, uploaded it to every student competition, and a recruiter just happened to see it. I did not place in those competitions, but randomly a recruiter saw me upload to several competitions they were judging, and that Sony recruiter sought me out. So keep showing your work, do what you got to do to put yourself out there and make sure that you are seen. It works both ways. We want to be seen, and you got to put yourself out there. So yeah, look development. So I'm not an animator either, but I want to piggyback off of Nicole because it look development as part of the team, we determine the final look of an asset. And when I say asset, that could be a prop, it could be a character or environment. And we also study the way the light reacts with that surface. So if we go to the next slide, I could show you some of my favorite shaders. So right here, you can see examples of wood, gold, glass. That glass is smoky. And while texture painters may paint the roughness to make it more smoky, we can dial down the roughness to make that glass more transparent. So there are knobs and things in the 3D software that I learned on the job at Sony. I did not know the software before I got there. So there's opportunities for you to learn on the job too. I learned how to use the software at Sony, and I started in lighting, but found a real liking instead of setting the mood of shots and, moving around lights and determining how a scene would look just using lighting. I found a liking to dialing shader parameters and helping distribute assets with the team. So I want to talk about look development as it is. I think it's a lot more technical stuff that goes into it, but I want to just kind of share how personally determine the final look of an asset helps me discover who I am, and my perspective adds to that. So we could go to the next slide. We could talk about how diversity influences a project. So this is a collage of a whole bunch of images, and they're all family. So to the right is a character named Andres. Please watch Vivo if you haven't. He's one of the main characters, and he represents a turning point in my career. So while I was doing props and environments and went on this path toward look dev, Andres was the first main character I look developed. And when I first went on the show, I was like, wait, why are they giving me a main character? I haven't done a main character. I just learned look dev 2 years ago. What's going on? And like, I'm looking at my skin. Every review is about skin. And I'm like, oh, shout out to Carl Herbst and the visual effects supervisor. They always made sure to make me realize, like, yeah, you count, like your skin and everything that you represent is going to be something that's represented in the film. So if you look to the left, that's my granddad holding a dog in the movie Vivo. There's a lot of interaction between Andres and the furry character. If you look all the way to the left, a lot of the men in my family have that gray, peppery beard and hair. So I had to develop the tone of the hair and how light transmits through the hair. So I experienced that firsthand just by looking at my family. Look, they're behind a building. I had to look at buildings behind Black characters and make sure those tones of brown was different in final lighting. So just wanted to shout out that those different experiences, your experience does count when you are on a look development team or this part of the pipeline. So we can go to the next slide. I'll talk a little bit more. I want to shout out the clients because Nicole mentioned before that, this is really a good time to be in film. And particularly at Sony, this is one of the first movies I was on where the client artwork was a deep representation of how much thought was put into representing how many skin tones are in the African diaspora. So right here, the client drew from 1 to 5, 1 to light, to 5, how many skin tones could be covered from Caucasian to Black. We went as dark and we named some skin tones espresso, lighter was another color. So it's a whole bunch of things that went into this, but also want to shout out the palette. So if I had a dress that was brown, maybe it looked good on a Caucasian character, but on a Black character, depending on his skin tone, it might be nude. So we need to make sure we call these things out. We need to make sure before it goes into lighting, because we need to save money. We don't need to be in the final shot, and then the crowd say it's nude, and then they'll go back. But anyway, there's a color palette that also went with different characters, and that's representing the client artwork. And I think the client did an excellent job making sure that everyone was aware that skin tones and aging between cultures and skin colors matter. So if we go to the next slide, I could explain a little bit more on the turning point in my career. There should be a hand here. I'm just going to press have it played. So this seems simple, but one of the challenging parts of Vivo was getting the main character's hand to look correct, because the hand interacted with so many things. And our pipeline, traditionally, the default settings of subsurface, or the way light responds on the other side of the skin once light is transmitted through the skin, is usually really, really warm and really bright. So a lot of that was toned down. We need to make sure that when we make animation, even though it's fantasy, that it's rooted in realism, so that when people go to the theater, they feel that, oh, they feel like that tie is a tie. They feel like that building is a building. We need to feel like that skin is skin. So the best way to do that is to have artists that look like the people that they're working on in terms of look dev. Also, I like wearing gold jewelry. I don't know, every culture does, but but you can see he's wearing a gold watch. So while I'll say that, we dial shininess, we need to make sure that we have people that work here that, wear jewelry against certain skin tones. And on the left, we have references from Cuba of a person's hand where the hand is a little bit more yellow than the other side. So, and another character, or a Caucasian character, might be more red. So if we go to the next slide, I'll kind of end this talk about diversity within our film. I just want to give another big shout out, because we didn't cover like hair. We have a hair department. So like hair is so important in representing the diaspora, so dynamic. So we got wavy hair, we have hair that's more shiny, and people who treat their hair say it is more shiny, and that's different. Like I was mentioning before, hair might transmit more or less light, and all of that stuff was represented through character variations. And in look development, we determined those different character variations. So I think Vivo did an excellent job at showing Cuba and that wide range of lighter skinned people, albino people. All these people exist in our culture. And I think Vivo was one of the movies where in the crowd, I felt it. Like, we went through parameters and look development to determine those skin tones, but watching the movie, I felt the variation and variety of everyone. And I have also roots, like we mentioned before, in Trinidad and South Carolina, but a couple of generations ago, I also have roots in Cuba. So I visited Cuba before, and that's where my family is from. So I work on a film and pay homage to my family. Like, who can say that? So I'm just proud to be here at this point at Sony. So if you are interested in look development, this is what it is. And I hope that you gravitate towards this presentation of look development. And at the same time, I want to give a shout out to everybody, because I think everyone did an awesome job, and I've gravitated to everyone's speech and everyone's uniqueness during this entire presentation. So I'm gonna leave it at that before I introduce the next part. But I just want to thank everybody, and we'll leave off to the next part of this session.
Ty, do you want to go ahead and introduce the next piece before we come back? I'm just looking at the time, or do we want to take this, or we can, I guess we can take some questions. Should we do that? Let's take some questions.
I'll introduce the next piece. I'll introduce it. So working at Sony, there's been a culmination of culture. And the next piece I want to present is the trailer for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. You'll see some, while Miles Morales is wearing a mask a lot of the trailer, Shout out to also a section of the trailer that shows India World. So we're still exploring different parts of the universe and the multiverse we haven't in animation, and a lot of people's culture out here. We're still really, studying and making sure we stay as real and as honest as we can to the story and animation. So I want to give a shout out to Across the Spider-Verse while we play the trailer. Thanks for attending.
Thank you. We'll play the trailer and then we'll hop back on for some questions.
Alright. Every time I'm leaving on you, you don't make it easy. No. Wish I could be
Miles, you got a minute?
Oh, what? Whoa. Gwen, how did you get? How have you been?
It's a long story. Is this the room you grew up in?
It is, but my dorm room is very adult.
Right. No, of course. Hey, are these your drawings?
What? No,
Oh,
no.
good. I missed you too.
Okay. So, what are you doing here? I mean, I thought I'd never see you again.
Want to get out of here?
I'm grounded.
Bummer.
What?
Is Spider-Man grounded?
I mean, I.
All right, I'm mindful of time. We have a couple of minutes, and I just wanted to pose a couple of questions to the panel, and then we'll open it up if we have time for more. Just gonna grab. Sorry, folks, give me 1 minute here. Switching screens. Okay, so one of the questions was, I think we kind of covered this a little bit already, but I guess we'll probably end on this note, but what would you like to see more in the future of the industry? If there's anything that you didn't get a chance to share already, I wanted to take a moment and talk about that.
I have more stuff. As I hinted at the end of my section, I would like to see more LGBT characters and more of us behind the scenes, and not just lesbian and gay characters. We need to have bisexual characters, trans characters, ace characters, all of the folks in the alphabet. We deserve to have us on screen and behind the scenes. I would also really love to see more queer and trans representation that isn't white. As like I said, we exist all over the world. There's no reason why that also can't be portrayed on screen. Like in these films are supposed to be, believable. Like Ty said, we need to bring aspects of the real world into these projects to have them grounded in a sense of reality. And we don't live in a world where everyone is white, straight, or cis. So it doesn't make sense for our films to not reflect that.
Thanks, Jabari. Does anyone else want to add anything?
I just want to see one movie with jollof rice. That's it.
I agree.
I agree with Aaron. Every time I go home for a family function, the amount of things I see in my family that I'm like, oh, I cannot wait to bring that to the screen. You know, the roles just haven't showed up for it yet, but there's a lot of stuff. We have a lot of, you know, experience that we would love to share. So I'm excited for that.
I'm mindful of time, but there's one question that I just pulled out of the Q&A here. There's a question that's asking, how do you find a community and support as a Black artist moving to a new city, especially one like Vancouver, where we don't make up a large part of the population and even less so in the animation industry, plus a lot of us are working from home. Just wondering if anyone has any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk a little bit to that. I think that something that is super helpful, there's an online community called CNOC, or Comic Nerds of Color, and it's not just for Black artists, it's for, you know, comic nerds of color. And I've not been on it in a while, but I know that they have on Facebook, you can just kind of message out, hey, anybody in Vancouver want to meet up and and talk nerd stuff. I think that's a huge help.
This might be thinking a little bit outside of the box, but Vancouver itself is a lot of people that work in film. So I teach a dance class, or now and then with my partner, and just by being part of the community, you'll find a lot of people work in film, even if you are outside of traditionally going to a CGRAPH or film event. There are opportunities if you are open to just being part of the community, where you might see Black people there. There are dance hall classes here. There are hip hop classes here. There are many, but you may find people that work in film that are also attending those classes, but just sort of outside the box, we wanted to give that recommendation.
Thank you. And I'm sad to say that we are out of time. I just want to thank everyone for taking the time today to join us on our panel. We really hope that you enjoyed today's conversation and hearing from all the unique, diverse perspectives that we had. And I want to thank our panelists for sharing your unique, authentic stories, and for allowing me to be a part of this and to be your moderator. It truly was a pleasure and a privilege. So thank you so much. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the event. And a huge thank you to AfroAnimation for allowing us to be an exhibitor. So thank you. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.